Chapter 3, The Voice in the Dark. On the third day, I began to hear my own voice. I mean, precisely, I heard a voice that sounded exactly like mine, the same tone, the same pitch, the same way that Youssef Abdel Jawad al-Mazari speaks, a civil engineer from Tangier, 37 years old. But it was not me. It happened for the first time at exactly 11:30 in the morning. I was in the kitchen, peeling potatoes to prepare lunch. Fatima was in her room. The house was silent, except for the sound of the wind outside. The small window above the kitchen sink, I was peeling and thinking about Al-Khair and our interrupted conversation and the board she had mentioned and not explained. From the corridor, with complete clarity, I heard a voice say, "Fatima, I'm here." My voice exactly. I dropped the knife in the sink and rushed to the corridor. No one, empty corridor. The western room door locked as it was Fatima's door. Shut, no one. I went to Fatima's room and knocked. She opened it. She was sitting on her prayer rug doing dhikr. She looked at me with calm eyes. I asked her, "Did you call me just now?" She said, "No, I was praying." I knew it hadn't been her. The voice came from the corridor, not her room. But who then? I returned to the kitchen and continued peeling the potatoes, convincing myself. I was tired. 3 days barely sleeping, and anxiety affects perception, and the human brain manufactures sounds and shapes from emptiness when strained. This is science. This is documented. It happened again in the afternoon when I was sitting in the courtyard, reading. I heard my voice coming from inside the house from the direction of the main room saying, "Come." One word, my tone, with clarity that does not resemble hallucination. I went and found nothing. And in the night, that particular night, the third thing happened that made it impossible for me to continue with rational explanations. It was around midnight. I was in bed trying to sleep without success. The lamp off and the room dark except for a thread of moonlight seeping between two curtains. I was on my back looking at the ceiling as people do who cannot sleep. Then I heard my voice from under the bed, not a whisper. Clear speech in a normal tone that neither faded nor rose. "Turn off the light, Youssef." The light was already off. I leaped from the bed in one quick movement and sat on its edge and opened my phone's flashlight and directed it under the bed. Dust and an old wooden box my father used to keep his papers in when he visited the village in summer. Nothing else. My phone's light trembling because my hands were trembling. I sat on the edge of the bed without lying back down, looked at the old box, and it stared at me from the darkness. My father's box under my bed in the room I was in. Real fear is not screaming. Real fear is silence. A quiet warm freeze, as if the body burns inside while you sit still outside and your mind works at high speed searching for a logical exit and finding none. On the fourth day, I called my wife Najat. My wife Najat is a practical, intelligent woman, a mathematics teacher at a private secondary school. She does not believe in superstitions or in things that cannot be measured. When we married 9 years ago, she said to me, "I'm a woman of reality. I love you and respect you, and we will build a real life," and we did. I told her that Fatima was sick and that I would stay a while to arrange better care for her. General, comfortable words that do not cause alarm, but she asked me, "Your voice sounds strange, Youssef." I said, "Tired." She said, "No. Strange like your voice, but heavier." As if there's something extra in it, something extra. I don't know why those words specifically stopped me. I said, "How is my daughter?" Najat said, "Lamia is fine. She asks about you every day. She drew something for you yesterday." I said, "What did she draw?" Najat said slowly, as if rereading the drawing. "She drew a house with black walls and small windows, and in front of the house, a man standing. She said it was you." I said, "Nice. Send me the photo." She sent it. I looked at it. The painting was certainly a 6-year-old's drawing, incomplete lines and colors exceeding their boundaries. But the house resembled the house in Ain Ramada, and the man standing in front had another shadow beside him much larger than him. I asked Najat, the large shadow in the drawing, what did Lamia say it was? She was silent a moment, then said, she said it was her grandfather's friend. I hung up. Her grandfather's friend, my little daughter in Tangier, had drawn something she had never seen. On the 5th day, I went to Al-Khair and asked her to finish what she had begun saying about the board. We sat in the small courtyard of her house on 2 plastic chairs while she rubbed her hands together as she always did when worried. She said about a month and a half ago, Fatima was found in the western room. I don't know how she opened it. The room had been locked for years and no one knew where the key was. But that morning the room was open and Fatima was sitting in the inner corner holding something. I said, "What was she holding?" Al-Khair said, her eyes fixed on her hands, a small wooden board, a piece of wood with names written on it. I saw the board for a second before Fatima hid it behind her back. Many names, some carved old and some more recent. I asked, "Did you see the names?" She said, "I saw 2 names at the bottom carved more recently than the rest. I couldn't read them well, but it seemed one started with the letter Fatima, Eftala, or perhaps another F," I said. And right after that, the change in Fatima began. Al-Khair nodded, then looked at me with a sincere, painful gaze and said, "Youssef, son of my brother, go to a sheikh. In this land, there are people who know these matters. Go before it deepens." I said, "I don't believe in these things, Al-Khair." She looked at me for a long time, then said in absolute calm, "The one who does not believe is usually the one who is afflicted because he does not take precautions." That night, I did not wait for everyone to sleep. I sat and wrote in my notebook everything I had observed until that moment. The list was long enough to make the engineer inside me stop denying what he was seeing. The knock on the wall the night of my arrival, Fatima's different look, and the words, "We footsteps," on the ceiling of a single-story house for 2 hours. Fatima standing in the corridor, her widest smile, the breathing in the recording beside my head, my voice in the corridor, my voice in the main room, my voice from under the bed, the locked western room, the warm substance on the window edges, the scratch marks on the wall, Lamia's drawing, the wooden board with names. I closed the notebook and went to my room. At 3 in the morning, without footsteps on the ceiling this time, without calls in my voice, without any prelude, there were knocks on the shared wall between my room and the locked storage room. One knock, then 10 seconds of silence, then a knock, then 10 seconds of silence, regular as clockwork. I got up from my bed and approached the wall slowly and placed my ear against the cold stones. The knocking stopped immediately when my ear touched the wall. 30 seconds of complete silence. Then from the other side, exactly level with my ear, one knock, a reply to my ear. I pulled my head back quickly. My heart was pounding with a force and speed you could feel in your neck. I looked at the wall, dark, silent stone, then the whisper, a wet, hoarse voice as if it came from inside the wall itself. From between the stones, like a voice emanating from the building rather than from behind it. "You heard me at last." Clear Arabic, quiet, reassuring in an alarming way. I ran to Fatima's room and threw open her door. She woke frightened. I told her everything. She looked at me with completely awake eyes, then said in a calm more terrifying than anything I had heard that night, "I've been hearing it for 6 weeks, Youssef, almost every night, but it hadn't spoken before tonight. It only knocked." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked toward the wall between us and the western room, then said in a quiet, pallid voice, "Because it asked me not to tell anyone, and said that if I told, someone would come and tell it the truth." I said, "The truth about what?" She looked directly at me. "About you."